Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined by Jeff Mordock, Washington Times White House reporter, right after this. You know, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. As promised, joining me now, Jeff Mordock, Washington Times White House reporter. Hi, Jeff. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Andy. How you doing?
Doing just fine. Let's check out one of your stories that was posted not long ago. Record number of blacks buy firearms boost overall gun sales during COVID pandemic. Okay, why the big boost?
Well, what we're seeing right now is that gun sales in general are surging. 2021, we have preliminary numbers so far, but it looks like 2021's on track to be the second biggest year for gun sales since 2020, which was a record. And what we're finding is that African Americans are really driving this gun surge. They're actually outpacing whites in terms of new gun ownership. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, overall, is crime in the inner cities is getting out of control, and that they need to feel a need to protect themselves. A couple things, too, is also the uncertainty around COVID drove a lot of people to buy firearms, and I think that goes across all demographics: white, black, Asian. An African American who owns a gun club in Texas was telling me, they're concerned that there's so many hate crimes carried out against African Americans, and they haven't seen the hate crime legislation that Asian Americans saw after the spa shootings in Atlanta. And that's another reason that they're just concerned in terms of being a victim of a hate crime. So there's a lot of factors. It's not just one that are fueling the surge.
I'm going to move you to another one of your stories. Biden says postponed 5G rollout by telecom giants is a step in the right direction. All right, so why is it a good thing?
Well, this is a good thing, and I think everybody would agree, whether you support the president or don't support the president. I think everybody would agree this is a good thing. AT&T and Verizon wanted to roll out their 5G network near some airports, and FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, had warned that that could lead to disruptions. It could lead to disruptions with planes. It could interfere with instruments. It could also interfere with shipping. And as you know, with the supply chain being the mess that it still is, the last thing we need is more stuff disrupting our shipping. All of that was a factor. They've agreed to postpone it, give the government more time to do some studies, do their own studies, and they'll just hold off activating their 5G service until we've had some more time to study these potential disruptions.
Okay, now I have 5G internet. Would that be affected in any way, or is that something totally different? I have a 4G phone, but 5G internet.
Well, your 5G would be fine because this is really for the network surrounding the airports. If you're in the airport, if you're active at the airport, that is where you're going to see this. People working at the airport. Those are the people who are going to be affected by it. I also have 5G. I won't be affected by it as well.
Biden to spend $1 billion to challenge meat industry giants that he blames for high inflation. Sounds like he needed someone to take the rap for the lousy economy.
Biden has declared war on the meat industry. And I find this to be such an interesting story because he has declared war, but it's not the only industry he's declared war on. Right now, the FTC is looking into whether retailers use the supply chain chaos to raise prices. They're looking into whether oil and gas companies are engaging in their words, illegal conduct to profit from higher gas prices. The Justice Department is looking into consolidation in the book publishing industry. There's a lot of these investigations going on, and it's the Biden administration trying to deflect the blame on themselves for inflation, and they're blaming corporate consolidation in all of these industries and saying, well, they're profiteering, they're engaging in illegal price fixing, and they're really demonizing these corporations in an attempt to sort of hope the public doesn't know that it's their policies that are increasing inflation. One of the things I find really interesting in this story is there's been four beef giants have dominated the industry for 30 years. Everybody agrees on that. But so we've had these four companies run the meat industry for 30 years. Why is now the problem? Why is it now they're engaging? We haven't had any change in the near monopoly of these companies running the meat industry. And the change isn't anything in these companies' practices. The change is the pandemic. The change is beach restaurants were closed, beef demand decreased, consumers weren't going out to stores as much, beef demand decreased. The farmers in livestock companies, they had to cull their herd. There's still a labor shortage in play because now these restaurants have opened up, these stores have opened up, consumers are flocking and they want beef, they want chicken, they want meat. The supply isn't there. It's basic supply and demand got disrupted because of our COVID policy, not really because of any shady practices on behalf of the meat industry.
White House reduces briefing room capacity amid Omicron surge. How is this working?
This is what it is. It's the White House is now limited to the press briefings to 14 journalists. There's 49 open seats in the briefing room. Every major organizations all get their own seat. In full disclosure, the Washington Times has a seat press briefing room. There have been some infections. There have been some cases in the briefing room among reporters who've been part of either the president's pool or have come to the briefing room. I get the emails from the WHCA, and we've seen a few of these infections. I don't know the exact number, but it's been a high amount over the last couple of weeks. So the way this is going to work now is reporters will fill seats on a rotating schedule. So there'll be 14 seats in the briefing room. Each reporter is then dumped into a pool A, pool B, pool C, pool D. And then depending on how many people are in your pool, it's usually about 10 people, 10 to 14 people. Each person gets a day out of that pool. So roughly a reporter will be in the briefing room maybe once every 2 weeks. And they're hoping that this will reduce transmission, and we'll see what happens. We'll see, as somebody who's been following this, I kind of knew this was coming. It was only going to be a matter of time. And they did this under the Trump administration, and they carried it through to the early part of the Biden administration. Cases started going down, I want to say late spring, early summer, and they started filling the briefing room back up. Now they're going to keep it down a little bit, give everybody a chance to social distance. One of the things I'm glad they're doing, there's been a problem with the White House allows people who don't have seats in the briefing room to come and ask questions, and that's a good thing. But with Omicron and COVID, it's made the briefing room very, very crowded. It's also, not everybody who's coming in there is vaccinated. And this is a way to sort of cut down on that. We're not going to have people who don't have seats standing on top of everybody, coughing or breathing on people, even when they're wearing masks. So I think that's a good thing to thin the herd a little bit in the briefing room. But I'm also a little worried that 14 per briefing is not a lot to ask, to really ask a lot of questions of this administration.
All right, before I let you run, anything we should know about that you happen to be working on?
Supply chain. The Biden administration is going to give a speech in a little bit on the supply chain. They're going to try to make the argument that the supply chain was not a problem during the holiday season. I think a lot of people who try to get gifts and gifts that came late may disagree with that. We'll see how they pitch it.
Okay. Folks, you can read all of Jeff Mordock's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. Thanks, Jeff. Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year to you too, Andy. Take care.
Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.